Morning decisions. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
How do life changes affect us? How do we navigate through difficult times? And what's involved in learning to cope with change? That's what I'm talking about this week here on Let's Talk About Mental Health, the weekly podcast that teaches you how to look after your well-being. So get comfortable and let's talk about mental health. Hello and welcome to episode 189, and thanks so much for joining me as I talk about life changes and mental health. I'm Jeremy Godwin and I share practical tips you can apply immediately, based on quality research and my own personal experience following a breakdown in late 2011 that changed my life. Each week, I look at how to improve one specific aspect of your well-being. In this episode, I'll be talking about what life changes are and why they affect us, why we need to approach them thoughtfully, and how to deal with life changes in a considered way. So, let's talk about life changes. Have you ever felt a wave of sadness or loss after a significant change, even when you knew that the change itself was for the better? Or have you ever wondered why, when life takes an unexpected turn, you might find yourself feeling a bit lost, even when the change is something you might have been longing for? Life can throw unexpected challenges that dramatically shift our personal situation. Think of having to move to a new home and all the disruptions that come from uprooting your life, or experiencing the pain of loss, or swapping jobs, or even pivoting to a brand new career entirely. These sorts of life changes can be really pivotal, and they're often the types of moments that can make it feel like we're trying to navigate through a storm. The challenge then is, how do you learn how to deal with these sorts of changes in a way that protects your mental health and well-being? Well, before we get into that, let's first talk through some definitions and talk about what are life changes. A life change can be defined as any significant shift in your personal or professional life that disturbs your usual routine or comfort zone. These can range from small changes like taking on a new hobby or moving to a new neighborhood to larger, more impactful events, such as starting a new job, going through a divorce, or even experiencing the loss of a loved one. Now, of course, life changes are not necessarily negative. Positive changes like a promotion at work, getting married, having a baby, or adopting a new pet are all examples of life changes that are hopefully positive and exciting. However, they still require adjustments and can impact your mental health. So, in essence, any alteration to your status quo can be considered a life change. However, the key point I want to make here is that regardless of the scale or nature of the change, the common factor is that it requires us to adapt and adjust. This process can be challenging, and it's during that period of adaptation where our mental health can be most affected because things feel uncomfortable and unfamiliar. One of the main ways life changes can impact on your mental health is stress. Change by its very nature tends to introduce uncertainty and unpredictability into our lives. We human beings are creatures of habit, and so our minds might struggle to process these changes, which can lead to feelings of stress and anxiety. Also, significant life changes might lead to feelings of loss, even if the change is perceived as positive. For example, you might feel a sense of loss when leaving a job you loved for a new opportunity. These feelings of loss can lead to sadness, loneliness, and even depression. On the other hand, positive changes can also bring about feelings of happiness, joy, and excitement. But even these positive emotions can be mentally exhausting and require energy to manage effectively. So that leads to the next part of today's topic, why we need to approach life changes thoughtfully. And you need to be thoughtful about how you handle them, because how much these changes impact your mental health often depends on how you perceive and respond to whatever is going on. Change can bring about a wide range of emotions, from excitement and anticipation through to stress, anxiety, and even sadness. Without a thoughtful approach to managing these changes, our mental well-being can take quite a hit. Imagine trying to sail a ship into uncharted waters without a compass or map. The journey would likely be full of uncertainty, fear, and a much higher likelihood of going off course than if you had some basic navigation tools. Similarly, when we work through life changes without a thoughtful approach, we might find ourselves overwhelmed and lost. This is about giving yourself the opportunity to prepare mentally, emotionally, and even physically for the adjustments ahead. Even if you're excited about something like moving house or even moving to a whole different place, there's probably a lot of excitement, but there's often also sadness about the place we're leaving behind and worry about what the new place will be like. I've never really said this out loud before, not even to my partner, but leaving Melbourne back in 2015, my home of almost 14 years, was heartbreaking. I loved that city. I grew up in Sydney and first visited Melbourne in 1996, and I instantly fell in love. I never really felt like I fit in Sydney, but Melbourne immediately felt like home. And I knew with every single fibre of my being that I was going to live there someday. I just felt an instant connection, and it was so different to Sydney. And when we moved there in 2001, it was everything I thought it was going to be and more. However, we had no choice but to leave. By late 2014, I was a full-time student and my partner was miserable in his job. And that meant we needed to make some serious choices about what we wanted and needed to do. Fortunately, he had family in country New South Wales we were able to go stay with for a while, so we could figure out what to do, which was great because my partner wanted to do some study as well, and there's just no way we could have stayed in the city with both of us being full-time students. Moving was a necessity. We had an opportunity to totally transform our lives, but it meant making major changes. What was most difficult to leave behind were the people I cared about and who had grown to become my chosen family. As we drove out of Melbourne that last time and I watched the city fade away in the rear vision mirror, part of me knew everything was going to change, but I could never have imagined by how much. Now, more than 8 years later, I am yet to return to Melbourne. I've never been back. I mean, for the first 2 or 3 years, I just couldn't afford it. Being a full-time student often involves living on the smell of an oily rag, and we definitely did. But by the time I started earning enough money to even think about returning to visit, most of my friendships there had faded into something far closer to acquaintanceships. To paraphrase that song from Gautier, now they're just somebodies that I used to know. In fact, that's the thing that I've struggled with the most over the 8+ years we've been gone, just how much those relationships changed. I was shocked by how little effort others put in to stay in touch, and eventually I felt like it just wasn't worth it to me to feel like I was the one doing all the work, so I took a step back, and now here we are, years later, and many miles apart from those people who I once knew like the back of my hand. My point, because yes, I do have one buried in there somewhere, is that we all have to figure out how to deal with not only the life changes themselves, but also the ripple effect that they have. those broader consequences that can see a change in one area of your life end up spreading out into many other areas of your life as well. When we approach changes thoughtfully, we give ourselves the opportunity to prepare mentally, emotionally, and even physically for the adjustments ahead. And that can involve acknowledging your feelings instead of ignoring them or trying to suppress them, seeking support from others, and using coping strategies that work best for you. A thoughtful approach also means understanding that it's perfectly understandable to feel uncertain or anxious, and it's absolutely okay to give yourself time to adapt. On a broader level, a thoughtful approach to life changes helps us to grow as individuals. Changes can be powerful learning experiences, and they can teach us about resilience, flexibility, and the importance of self-compassion. They can shape our perspectives, make us more empathetic, and enrich our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Approaching life changes thoughtfully isn't just beneficial for your mental health. It's an essential part of navigating the journey of life. It helps you to weather the storms that inevitably come our way from time to time. It lets you enjoy the calm moments in between, and it helps you to come out much stronger and a lot wiser on the other side. When it comes to change, it's not just about getting through it, but about growing through it. So how do you do that? How can you manage life changes? Well, before I get into that, let's take a quick break to hear from the amazing brands who help me to pay the bills around here. Hello again. Let's get back to what we're here for, which is how to deal with life changes. Now, let's talk about how to deal with life changes in a considered way. And so let's begin with my first tip, which is focus on acceptance. Because the first step to working through change is to acknowledge and accept that change is a natural part of life. It can be uncomfortable and even painful, but resisting change can often lead to increased stress and anxiety. This is something I talked about back in episode 65 about resistance, as well as episode 36 about acceptance. And the fact is that you can either fight against the reality of the situation, which probably won't change it anyway, or you can focus on accepting it as it is, which will help you find a greater sense of calm with the situation and focus on figuring out how to move forward. Just remember that accepting the situation as it is doesn't mean you endorse it or you're happy about it. It simply means that you understand that all you can ever control in life is yourself and what you choose to do and say. So you're consciously choosing peace of mind instead of banging your head against a wall. Okay, so my next tip is focus on the why. And what I mean by this is that if this is a change that you've initiated, such as changing jobs or moving house, then keeping your mind firmly fixed on why you made the choice to do this is going to help you navigate through any emotional rough spots you may hit. Remind yourself that it's okay to feel emotional and that changes are often challenging because it forces us out of our comfort zone, but that there is a good reason why you're doing what you're doing. And what if the change isn't of your choosing? What if it's something that's been thrust upon you, like losing your job or being told you have to move because your landlord is selling? Well, that brings me to my next tip: choose your mindset. And by that, I mean that you can either choose to see it as a problem or as an opportunity. The choice you make will drastically alter the way you view things. There is meaning in practically any situation, just waiting for you to find it. Sometimes it's simply a case of being able to identify the lessons you need to learn from whatever is happening even if that lesson is just what not to do next time, or what you don't want to have happen again in the future. When I left my job in late 2019 and started doing the work I do now, I realized that there was a clear lesson for me to learn, and that was that I never want to go back to working in any kind of corporate role ever again. That was a huge realization, and it's meant that I've needed to then make decisions about how I was going to make sure I could follow through on that, like expanding the work I do and studying for additional qualifications to make sure I would never have to lean on my corporate background ever again. Every situation has something to teach us. It's just up to us to identify the lesson. Okay, next, embrace the change. And this may sound moderately insane, especially if it's a really challenging change, but instead of resisting the change, try embracing it instead. Why? Because, again, it's a matter of mindset. Change is going to happen whether we like it or not. It's one of the few things we can be certain about in life, along with taxes and the ability of the Kardashians to maintain a massive empire out of very little. And so you either fight it, which is futile, or you lean into it and start viewing the change as an opportunity for growth and development rather than something to be feared. Remember, whether you look for problems or you look for solutions, what you seek is what you will find. Okay, next, express your feelings. Because it's vital that you allow yourself to feel and express your emotions during times of change. Keeping emotions bottled up can lead to increased stress and anxiety, and it doesn't actually make them go away anyway, which means they're probably going to pop up and wreak havoc when you least expect it. So it's a case of better out than in. Speak to a trusted friend, family member, or a professional if necessary. You'll also find that writing in a journal can be very therapeutic, and I'll come back to that point in a minute. Next, limit your exposure to stressors, which simply means that if possible, you should try to limit your exposure to unnecessary stress during periods of change. This might involve reducing your consumption of negative news or setting boundaries in stressful relationships. The reason why is that the last thing you need is another spoonful or 50 of stress added on to what you're already dealing with. Speaking of, my next point is maintain self-care practices. Because in times of change, it's easy to forget about taking care of yourself or to start making poor choices and relying on unhealthy coping mechanisms. But maintaining routines like regular exercise, a healthy diet, and adequate sleep can have a massive impact on your ability to cope with change because these practices boost your mood and give you the energy to tackle challenges. I talked about how to make smarter choices in episode 179 about coping mechanisms, and another way to do that is with my next tip, which is positive thinking and self-talk. And this is about remembering that the way you think about and speak to yourself matters. So choose to maintain a positive outlook and treat yourself with kindness, respect, and compassion. That doesn't mean just ignoring feelings or pretending they don't exist, but instead consciously practicing resilience and optimism and encouraging yourself with positive self-talk. This can be as simple as reminding yourself that you have successfully navigated changes before and you can do it again. I covered self-compassion in episode 153, which you'll find helpful for improving your self-talk. Plus, I covered self-talk in its own episode all the way back in episode 9. Okay, next, focus on the present. Can you tell me with absolute certainty every single thing that's going to happen tomorrow, next Tuesday, a month from now? No. nobody can. Yes, you can make informed guesses, and you can use past knowledge to predict likely future patterns, but life still has a way of throwing wackadoodle stuff at you when you least expect it. When you're going through changes, whether big or small, it's easy to focus on your worries about how things will turn out. But given that you can only control yourself and what you choose to do and say, it's therefore physically impossible to control the outcome of situations and events you're dealing with. Instead of worrying about the future, try consciously turning your focus to the present. One way to do that is with my next point: take things one day at a time. Because, again, you cannot possibly predict what will happen tomorrow. And if you focus on what may or may not happen in the future, you're going to very quickly become stressed and anxious. Turn your attention to the present and what you need to do today in order to keep moving things forward. Which leads to my next point: take things one step at a time. Because if you try to deal with everything all at once, you're going to find yourself becoming very overwhelmed very quickly, and that tends to make things far worse. When you break tasks and goals down into their smallest possible steps and focus on working on each individual item one step at a time, it can make the process of change feel much more manageable and a lot less stressful. Okay, next, develop a healthy perspective. Because I don't mean to downplay whatever you might be dealing with, but things are rarely ever as bad as they seem, especially in the heat of the moment when things are all uncertain and your emotions are in overdrive. I mean, I don't want to be melodramatic here, but more than once I've dealt with major life changes, and I'm here to tell the tale. Mind you, let me also say that I've looked into the abyss and the decor is terrible. Seriously though, most changes in life are temporary, and with time, things will settle down, and those anxious feelings you might be experiencing about whatever is going on will lessen bit by bit. Reminding yourself of this fact can help you maintain a balanced perspective. Okay, next, stay informed. If the change involves a situation that you can learn more about, like moving to a new city or starting a new job, gather as much information as you can. Having as much knowledge as possible can reduce feelings of uncertainty and help to increase your sense of control. Next, learn from the past. Reflect on past experiences where you've had to deal with change. What strategies helped you cope then? What lessons did you learn? Use this knowledge to help navigate current and future changes. It's also a good way to remind yourself of all the times you have survived and thrived in spite of challenging times. Next, create a new routine. So if a change disrupts your routine, then establish a new one as quickly as possible, because structure and routine can provide a sense of normality and control during uncertain times. That means making time for your self-care and relaxation so you can recharge your batteries, and it also means staying connected with friends and family, especially if you need to lean on their support while you deal with whatever is happening. Next, focus on positive visualization, which is a tool used by many, including elite athletes, where you imagine yourself successfully navigating your life change. Visualize the steps you need to take and how it feels to overcome your challenges. You might even find it helpful to create a vision board to help you focus on your ideal outcomes and stay motivated. Okay, next, keep a record of your journey. One of the things I'm most grateful for from the time when we moved to the countryside is that I took about 1 million photos and also created some journal notes for myself about key things we experienced. By recording all the things you're learning and experiencing through this transformation, someday you'll be able to look back on this period and see things in a more objective and grateful light. Plus, journaling is just a really effective tool for helping you to get your thoughts, feelings, fears, and worries out of your head, so you're carrying less baggage around with you. And that leads to my next point: practice gratitude. Because even in times of change, there are plenty of things to be grateful for. And the more you focus on the positive, the more positives you'll see to focus on. Regularly acknowledging the positives in life can help shift your perspective and reduce stress. And it's one of the daily practices I recommend in my daily reflection planner, which you'll find available to buy at the link in the episode description. Next, talk with a professional. If you're struggling with a life change and it's impacting on your mental health, seek professional help. Therapists and counselors are trained to help you navigate these changes and can provide you with valuable tools and strategies. And since major life changes can sometimes be stressful and upsetting, you'll find tips about handling change-related grief in my latest video, which is available now on YouTube and Spotify. Because when it comes to life changes and mental health, what it all boils down to is this. The one constant in life is that everything changes, which can be a real pain in the butt, given that change is often uncomfortable or even painful. But the fact is that you have been through many changes before and you were okay. And regardless of whatever you might be going through now, you will be okay as well. Time has a way of showing us what really matters. And at some point in the future, you'll be able to look back on this moment and see how it helped to shape you into an even better version of the already wonderful person you are. Take your time, show yourself kindness, and focus on what is within your direct control. You will be okay. The choice is yours, as it is with all things related to your well-being. So, what choice will you make today? Each week, I like to finish up by sharing a quote about the week's topic, and I encourage you to take a few moments to really reflect on it and consider what it means to you. This week's quote is by the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus, and it is, "There is nothing permanent except change." Let me repeat that. There is nothing permanent except change. All right, that's nearly it for this week. Next week, I'll be talking about your inner critic. That little voice in your head can be a really nasty piece of work sometimes, especially when it decides it's going to make you feel terrible about the things you do and say. There's a massive difference between constructive criticism and outright cruelty. And unfortunately, many of us have inner critics that would make a domineering and judgmental parent look tame by comparison. But guess what? You can do something about it. Hooray! So, next time I'll be talking about what your inner critic is and what it isn't, why dealing with it matters, and how to manage your inner critic for the sake of your mental health. I hope you'll join me for that episode, which will be released on Sunday, the 30th of July, 2023. Follow or subscribe on your preferred podcast platform to stay up to date with new episodes. And remember that I also create weekly videos with extra content. You'll find my videos on YouTube and Spotify. And if you'd like even more tips to help you look after your mental health, then sign up for my free newsletter, Thursday Thoughts, plus follow my 2 Instagram accounts, LTA Mental Health and It's Jeremy Godwin, where I post extra content daily. And if you become a supporter on Spotify or Patreon, you'll receive ad-free content as well as early access to episodes. You'll find all of those linked in the episode description and in the transcript at ltamh.com. Thank you very much for joining me today. Look after yourself and make a conscious effort to share positivity and kindness out into the world, because you get back what you put out. Take care and talk to you next time. Let's Talk About Mental Health is an independent program proudly produced by Reconnaissance Media, helping you find meaning and gratitude. For more information, visit reconnaissancemedia.com.